Hi everyone, welcome to Self-Knowledge. Today we are having another lecture of this self-knowledge course, and today we're having lecture number 27. Today we are going to be talking about a very important technique if we really want to dissolve our ego. Let me just check, just a minute, if everything is okay with the broadcast. And I'm going to start with the explanation of this lecture. Yes, I think everything is okay. So, today's lecture objective is to learn the technique to dissolve the psychological I, and we are going to do this using this technique that is known as the details. So we are going to learn how we can see the different details that compose our ego, and that way we are going to be able to be in from moment to moment eliminating all the different details of our different ways of being, of our different ways to react, to think, to feel, of all those negative defects that we all have in our psychology. And while doing this, we are going to be rescuing the energy that these eyes used to waste from our energy centers, and that way we are going to achieve the scientific chastity. That is, we are going to be able to balance our centers as we are going to be saving that energy. And that way, when we are practicing the suprasexuality, we are going to have energy so we can create our internal bodies. So we can actually make those creations. So we can empower ourselves. So we can get enlightened, because for that we need energy. But our ego all the time is wasting our energy and is actually making us to make mistakes all the time. So let's start, and let's say that this chapter that we are dealing with today is esoterically titled Death. And that is because when we start to do this work against our own ego, when we are actually aiming to make a real, a radical change within ourselves, we begin to live the circle where all humanity is stuck. All human beings that wants to continue, let's say, living their lives, let's say, feeding their own ego, just satisfying their pleasures, their pain, are actually going to see us like if we are like becoming different, like if we are like weird. They are actually going to, let's say, say that we are acting like if we are dead. And that is because if before we used to react in a certain way in a situation, now because we are working on ourselves, because we are actually practicing the psychological death from moment to moment, when we are faced with a situation, we are no longer we are not going to react the same way. We are going to take advantage of that situation to discover ourselves, to discover all the details of our own anger, of our own pride, of our own lust, of our own greed, so on. So we can, in the same moment, we can judge that psychological defect, and we can actually eliminate that from our psychology. So when we are doing this, when we are no longer reacting the same way, people is going to start like looking at us like, what is happening with this guy or with this girl? Let's say that we are faced with a situation where we are with our relatives or with our friends, and someone comes and treats us roughly, or someone comes and says something offensive to us that should hurt our pride, and that should make us react with anger. But as we are working on ourselves, as we are practicing the psychological death, because we are aiming to awaken, because we are aiming to feed our consciousness, to liberate our consciousness from our ego, we are not going to react. We are going to deny to our desires. We are going to observe that or the different details of the ego that wants to manifest in our mind, in our emotion, in our actions, in our words, and we are going to be eliminating that. And for that reason, we are going to be someone weird, someone like dead. To the others, they are going to say, hey, but you should react, you should say something, I don't know. But actually, we are now like giving more value to our energy, to our consciousness, than to defend our ego, than to defend our pride or our personality or whatever. And let's say, like, if we are with our coworkers, for example, and an opportunity arises in which we can take advantage of an illicit business. But as we are working on ourselves, as we are actually reflecting and we are actually aware that if we do that, we are going to be feeling a really defect, a thief defect, and we refuse to participate in that business, well, actually, they are going to start like even judging us because we are like weird. We are not acting like a normal people. We are actually for them. Sorry, we are going to become like that. And that is because when we are doing this work of disintegrating our defects, we begin to die to the ego, but we begin to live for the consciousness. Therefore, all those who want to continue living in the ego, or for them, we will be dead, we will be insensitive, because we no longer react mechanically to desires of our ego as everyone else does. And we should remember to understand better this topic, that every human being carries within himself a divine spark, which is called soul, which is called Buddhata, which is called essence. And let's remember that when we came from the source, from the sacred absolute sun, we all came with a 3% of free and awakened consciousness. That is that divine part in us. And we came with a 97% of essence that was innocence. And that came to get, let's say, trapped within the ego to make a course, to learn, to be conditioned, to learn from all the, let's say, from all the unconsciousness, so we can from there get out the wisdom. And that 97% of our essence is what is called our soul. It is also called the Buddhata and the essence. And this essence is trapped within all our weakness, within all our defects, within all that we call the psychological eyes, which are esoterically called the ego. So actually it is like this, that we see here in the image. All our essence, all that opportunity of learning, of awaken, is actually trapped and conditioned in all our different way to react, to talk, with our negative ways to feel, to have sex, etc. And with the work of the disintegration of these defects, by observing ourselves, which, because that is the first and the most important part, that we start self-observing, so we can discover what is going on within us. So we can discover, why am I always making mistakes? Why am I constantly feeling this way? Why am I constantly thinking this way? And when we start self-observing, and when we start judging ourselves, and when we start eliminating consciously our psychological defects, that essence starts to get free, and our essence begins to grow, to get stronger, and that way our consciousness starts to manifest itself with more clarity in us, and with more strength. So we are going to become more conscious, more stronger, and wiser, because we are liberating our consciousness. And that 3% that only was a 3% at the beginning is going to begin to grow, and we are going to be having a 4%, 5% of consciousness, until one day, working hard on ourselves, we are going to achieve 100% of consciousness. But what is important to understand, that in this 3% that we all have within ourselves, there is one spark, let's say 1%, that belongs to what is called the Divine Mother. That is the part of the love of our consciousness, and the mission of this inner part of ourselves, which is, let's say, like our goddess, our inner goddess, is to disintegrate our defects with a spear that she possesses. The spear, actually, what symbolizes is our willpower. And this part of our consciousness has been represented in different cultures with different names and with different images. For example, we can see here the mother for the Christianity, which is with this spear, which is wounding the dragon that represents our ego. But also we can see this Hindu representation where where our Divine Mother has several legs and several weapons to kill the different details of our ego. Here we have also another representation, but they are all representing the same essence. That deep down, it is the same essence, that divine part in us, that is our Divine Mother. Having understood this, let's explain what this technique of the details is about. To understand this, let me just check something here. Okay, to understand this, it is important to explain what is the structure of a tree. Because we are going to see like the relation between a tree and our own ego. You can see that a tree has many roots, but it has some main roots that are like the big ones, and have many small roots. But what is important to know, that the main roots of the tree do not feed the tree itself, but rather these main roots just are there to support the tree. To support it from bad weather, from winds, and also for the weight of the tree itself. And as I was saying, the very small roots that we can say that are almost like little hairs, sometimes very thin roots, those are the ones that spread through the rest of the earth and absorb the nutrients from the earth to feed the tree. And our ego is the same. So is our ego. Let's say that inside of us we have this tree. Let's try to explain it this way so we can understand this technique, which is our ego. And the main roots that support the tree are those 7 heads of Legion, also known as the 7 deadly sins, which are the main defects in our psychology. And they are, the laziness, the greed, the lust, the pride, the anger, the gluttony, and the envy. Those are the main defects. Those are the main roots. But these defects, they do not feed the tree itself. They just support the tree. But the very small roots, the ones that can be like so small that seems like hair, well, not like my hair, but like normal hair, sorry, they symbolize the details. Each one of these heads, of these main defects, is subdivided into thousands of small details that manifest through our different energetical centers to steal our energy, as I was saying. And they manifest in our mind, in our emotion, in our actions. And sometimes they are details so small, so insignificant to us that we don't even give them importance. However, we don't realize the amount of energy that is being stolen from us with these little details. And we don't realize that it is each one of these small manifestations of our ego what gives strength to the great manifestations of our ego. Small details, for example, like sarcasm or negative thoughts or resentments or a reaction of intolerance, of impatience, they are the small details that feed our anger. And small details like morbid thoughts or curiosity or lewdness or fantasize or watching certain videos that we watch, etc. They are the small details that are feeding the main defect in us, that is the lust. And thus, each one of our defects is feeding all this, and they in turn are maintaining and supporting that tree that is the ego. And details as small as picking up a coin from the floor that doesn't belong to us are for the small details that we usually don't pay attention to. But that small detail is actually feeding my greedy defect. And that is the reason why for most people it's hard or even sometimes impossible to go against their own ego, because they don't know how to actually stop being away. When they are trying to make a change, they just repress the defect, and that way we are not going to get something real, because we can repress the defect because of fear, because of what others will say, or because we are tired of the consequences of this defect. But if we just repress the defect, once a hard situation comes, then it is going to get out again, and we are going to make mistakes again. But if we start self-observing ourselves to discover these small details, so small that we don't even realize that it's the actual ego that is actually the defect, then we are going to actually be able to see the real changes, to be able to start rescuing energy and start rescuing essence, consciousness. And another example, so we can understand this, is that, for example, a main root can be like the greed. And these small details, here there are only many of the details of the greed. We can find the stingy detail, the spendthrift, that is a very great detail of our greed, but also the thief defect, the one that takes things that doesn't belong to him, and the hoarder defect, that is another detail, the ambitious detail, but we also have many details that tends to camouflage as consciousness, and that we tend to believe that they are not part of the defect. Let's say, for example, that we inside of us have an I that is the collaborator, and that is the one that wastes his money, but with the excuse of helping others, but helping others for things that are not really necessary. Like if, let's say, everyone at work is going to celebrate and they are going to spend on some expensive drinks, and one goes and one collaborates, even though we need the money for something that's real essential, but we give the money for fear of what they will say, or so they don't brand us as stingy and stuff. And that is that is a small detail of our greedy defect. Another defect that is commonly understood as consciousness but is not is our worker I, and that is the one who wastes most of its time working to obtain material things, material benefits, and lives in the background, the dedicating time to what is truly important, which is to awaken consciousness, which is to work on himself. Another detail of our greed is the one that is constantly worrying about money. That is another small detail of our greed. And the important thing to advance in the interior work is to make the effort from moment to moment to observe each one of these small details of the ego that are manifesting in us, and actually, as the Divine Mother, to eliminate each of the defects that we get to discover in ourselves. If we want to get rid, for example, of our anger, what should we do? Well, we cannot sit and say, okay, Divine Mother, eliminate this anger for me because I'm so tired of my anger. Actually, it doesn't work that way. For this to be a reality, we need to start observing our anger, observing how the anger manifests in us from moment to moment in our mind, in those small reactions of impatience, in the sarcasm, and several ways, and we are going to be asking for death for every small detail that we get to observe. And then, what should we start observing in ourselves? Well, our mind, our heart, and our sex. In our mind, we are going to find all our thoughts, and we know, all those thoughts that take us out of the here and now, that steal our energy and that feeds our defects, because behind each one of our thoughts, there is a defect that is feeding on it. We have thousands and thousands of negative details that come to our mind from moment to moment, and we need to start practicing the silence, the inner silence. And to achieve this, we need to be eliminating all those small details that are manifesting in our mind. Also, we are going to observe our heart, and in that brain, we are going to find our emotions. So we need to be observing, what am I constantly feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What is behind this feeling that I'm feeling? And we are going to be eliminating all the feelings, like the anxiety, like the fear, like the suffering, like the worry. Every time we feel this movement in our emotion, we need to realize that it is a psychological defect that is actually manifesting in our emotional center, and it is stealing our energy. So what we need to do, we are going to eliminate each one of them. We are going to observe where we feel in the emotion, and we are going to ask for death for that emotion, and we are going also to reflect on what is the defect that is actually making this emotion to arise. If it is the anger, or if it is the pride, or if it is the impatience, or if it is lust, if it is envy or whatever, you are going to discover that, and we are going to eliminate that from us. And also we are going to observe our third brain, which is the motor instinctive sexual brain. Actually, we say just sex, but actually it has the motor, that is our motion, our actions and words, and our instinctive and our sexual center. And there we are going to be observing what are we saying, what are we doing, how we want to react, how our sex is actually moving, and we are going to be asking for that, for all the details of the ego that wants to manifest there, and we are going to be eliminating each one of these defects. That is called, this procedure is called the ongoing death. That is to be dying from moment to moment, so we don't let the defects to steal our energy. And if we do this, the tree of the ego is going to begin to dry up. It's going to begin to look like this. And the consciousness tree, or the tree of our being, is going to start forming in us, and is going to grow, and is going to get stronger, and we're going to become real conscious beings. And by practicing this technique, that is to achieve the right thinking, eliminating everything that comes to our mind, achieving the right feeling, which is to eliminate everything that is moving in our emotion, to achieve the right action, the right talking, which is to be observing all the time what is coming out, all the details, small details of the ego, and eliminating them. We are going, as I was saying at the beginning, to achieve the scientific chastity. That is that we are going to be rescuing the energy, because chastity is the opposite to the fornication. And to fornicate is to waste, to spill our sexual energy. But actually, there is also emotional fornication, and it is also motor fornication. It is also intellectual fornication. So every time we waste our energy in an unnecessary way, we are fornicating. So when we are doing this work of be eliminating all the time all these defects, we are going to start rescuing the energy, and we are going to be able to start the initiated path. Yeah. And because when we go to the supersex and we are actually practicing the supersexuality with our partner, we are going to have energy, so we can upload through our spine, so we can start first regenerating the physical body, which is the first initiation. Once we receive in the inner worlds our silver sword, and we begin to regenerate our physical body, then we are going to regenerate using this energy by practicing the supersexuality. We are going to start regenerating our vital body. When doing this, our sword is going to be growing internally, actually in the astral world. We can corroborate this, because we are going to see how our sword is going to be get bigger, and then we are going to create our astral body. That is the third initiation. Then we are going to create our mental body, which is the fourth initiation, and we are going then to create our causal body, which is our fifth initiation. In this point, our sword is going to be this length. Actually, the sword is growing like our spine, the same length. And once we finish our fifth initiation, we are going to join the bodic and the atmic bodies, and we are going to complete what is called the first mountain. And when doing this, we are actually going to acquire a lot of consciousness. All this process is a process of consciousness awakening. And when doing this work of working ourselves, of eliminating our psychological defects, we actually learn to love humanity. Because now, how we are right now, we are only really just loving ourselves. Um, because we are not even loving ourselves. We are loving our ego. But why we are not loving ourselves? Because we don't know ourselves. And what we really are is our consciousness. And we have heard that, for example, that is say, love others as thyself. And for really loving others, we need to get really to know ourselves, to develop ourselves, that is develop our unconsciousness and start liberating our consciousness, and the wisdom that we rescue from the death of all our wrong ways of being will translate into understanding towards other people. So that way we are really going to learn to love humanity. And it is important to know that what is taught here is to put it into practice, to take it to the facts. That all the time, every time, we are going to be self-observing, and we are going to be paying attention to our mind, to our heart, and to our sex, to discover all these small details of our ego that is manifesting. And once we discover one, doesn't matter how small we think it is, we are going to request our Divine Mother so that she proceeds to disintegrate it. And this has been the technique that I want to explain today. This has been today's lecture, and I want to invite you to the next lecture. That will be next Sunday, and we will be talking about something very interesting. We are going to be talking about that famous force that many masters throughout the ages have incarnated, and that is known as the Christ. And we are going to see how the possibility of incarnating that force is actually latent within each one of us. We are going to be talking about the universal and the individual Christ. So don't miss that interesting lecture. And this has been all for today. Thank you for watching this video, and see you next Sunday. Ciao, ciao.